Hello, and welcome to the Herald's Horn. I'm Cal, and today on this episode, I am joined by co-host Dan to talk about Standard, Regional Championships, CubeCon, and some other random stuff too. Of course, we have our one recurring segment, Product Watch. We have like 4 bullet points, so you better be ready for that. And after the break, I chat with, Dan about Dan. It's the last of our Get to Know the Co-host interview series, and then now that we're done with that, we'll be interviewing lots of other notable Magic the Gathering players, personalities, etc., etc. Thank you so much to Dan, especially for sitting down and talking to me about Magic the Gathering for almost an entire hour today. Really quick, I wanted to throw this in here. Basically, right after Dan and I stopped talking, it was sneakily announced somewhere that Eric Lauer, the head developer of Magic the Gathering for the last several years, and one of the most important developers for the game since Morningtide, which is crazy, the Magic set Morningtide. Eric Lauer has retired after an astounding career in Magic game design. I just wanted to say thank you, Eric Lauer. You have done a ton to impact this game that I and many others have loved for so long. I'm sure you won't hear this, but I hope that you enjoy retiring and whatever else you end up doing, because I'm sure, like many people involved in making Magic, you won't be able to sit still. Thank you so much, Eric Lauer. I hope you have a great retirement. Now, on to the show. Hello, you are listening to episode number 2 of the Herald's Horn. My name is Cal Jones, and today I am joined by the wonderful Dan. That's right, today it's just Dan. Say hi, Dan. How are you?
Hi, Dan. How are you?
You and Emma, with this one recurring bit.
We need bits. I think that we should have recurring bits.
We should have recurring bits. Lexi established last episode that mine would be saying bussin', but I don't think that should be the case.
No, I think that she's correct.
All right, run the song. And welcome back. Episode 2 of the Herald's Horn, our first with only one co-host, but I'm sure Dan will do enough talking for 3 people. Isn't that right, Dan?
Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I'm known for. I actually had a question about our intro song. Does it have a horn in it?
Our intro song does not have a horn in it. However, there is a horn that is played at the beginning.
At the beginning of it, right. Okay.
As a separate soundtrack. I could just like repeat the horn over and over again under the little song. That would be obnoxious, right?
Well, I just think every time we say the Herald's Horn, there should be the horn sound effect underneath.
I think I should change the censoring sound from what it currently was to maybe the horn.
Something to think about. Anyway, we must proceed.
Yes, we must proceed. All right, on to our great big news topics for the day. First up, Standard is kind of back. I think that's kind of hot. Standard is kind of back. Whether it has to do with subtle changes that Wizards of the Coast is making in incentives for stores, whether it's because of the extended rotation, making people feel better about owning cards later. I got it as an aside. I did not know that like Kamigawa was still. I didn't know that the last Innistrad sets were still standard legal and will not be rotating out until this fall. It. But they are still legal.
They're so long. I forgot that standard rotation is 16 million years now.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey, it makes it a lot easier if you have cards. You can play them for like 2.5 years or whatever it is now. That was always
sick. My number one gripe with it. Yeah, is that like if you're getting into standard, having a standard deck that costs like maybe $300 or $400 sometimes is a pain in the butt when it's no longer legal in 16 months, or like if you're lucky, if you're playing that for the entire standard rotation, which never would happen.
No, exactly. So that could be a factor. The longer card legality. I know it's a factor for me. Obviously, it's a factor for Dan. But of course, the biggest reason is because it is a new regional championship season, and the qualifier format is standard. So people finally have a reason to play Standard again. Standard, once they killed Extended long ago, was the de facto way to play Magic for a while, and then somehow it became Modern. I mean, I get why it was Modern. Standard kind of went away, especially post-COVID. Not post, after the lockdowns and all that. Standard kind of went away, and now it's coming back, and I hope it's here to stay. I think Magic is infinitely better if people are playing a lot of Standard.
I totally agree with you. As a person who has been a long-standing Standard lover, it's one of the formats that I played competitively the most in my lifetime. It's always great when Standard is good. Standard has such a fluctuation between being really good and really bad sometimes. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, the whole of Magic is usually better when Standard is popping, because like it's the modern set. It's what's going on currently in Magic. It's cool when stuff goes into Modern and or Legacy and shake stuff up. I love Legacy and Vintage as older formats. But it's nice to see a cohesive, not overly like Oko offensive level powerful format for Standard to be.
Yeah, and I think it really helps right now that the Standard format, at least it seems to be very healthy, very fun, very good. Reviews are coming back. People are kind of already sick of a domain deck, but also found over the weekend, apparently another deck, Bant Toxic, just kind of eats domain's lunch. And so I saw a lot of RCQ winning Bant Toxic deck lists. I almost bought a Bant Toxic deck list of my own about last week because I was looking at Standard decks. I'm trying to play Standard. I love playing Standard. I've missed it. And I said, oh, I can like play Infect, but in Standard? Interesting. And then I was looking at it, and I hadn't looked at the new rotation schedule yet. And I was like, these are just all Phyrexia, all will be 1 cards. This is like a block constructed deck, and surely it will rotate out at the end of the year. I will not spend the $300 on this. And now it's like more like $500 because the deck did so well over the weekend that all the cards were more expensive. And now I know that I could play that deck until late 2025.
But again, it's only until someone like makes the next deck with whatever set that comes out that then trumps that and makes it completely irrelevant. So
yeah, that's the kicker. It's very strong right now, specifically against this big dirtily 4 to 5 color ramp domain deck. It's really good against that. But also, it's not going to get new pieces unless they give us more Infect cards. So, like, this is the ceiling of the deck.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like, more general threats, like something like a Shieldred or the 6-mana domain exile enchantment, like things like that you can probably invest your money into are probably going to see, like, a lot more play over time. But yeah, bummer about missing the boat on Bant Infect. It sounds fun.
Mono red, decent deck. $88 in paper, according to mtggoldfish.com.
Nice.
I know, exactly. You want to play Phoenix Chick? You want to play Monastery Swiftspear? Are you a Phoenix Chick gamer?
No, see, here's the thing about me. I'm a big control gamer and a big combo player, and aggro doesn't make sense to my brain. I'm a aggro player. I cannot get creatures to tap sideways the right way. I miss it up every time.
Yeah, you're not about that attack lifestyle.
It gets to the point where someone has blockers on board and my brain just falls apart. I'm like, do I just continue to swing over and over again? Am I supposed to play this like a control player now? I don't know.
Oh yeah, I would lose 2 of my creatures, but I still get 3 damage through, but then they're ahead on board. Yeah, I'm also bad.
Yes,
at that.
Exactly.
That's the kicker.
It's like, if they have a Teferi, then like, well, you have a Teferi, you obviously have won the game. What do I even do now? I'll just concede.
So it sounds like domain is for you. You just get to cast Atraxa Grand Unifier and draw 5 cards. And then be on your merry way.
That makes sense to me, yes. Yeah. Playing a huge monster, drawing 1,000,000 cards, just direct power. That makes sense to
kill your opponents with your Archangel of Wraths and whatnot. Anyways, yeah, like I said, it's the current RC season. This is drumming up interest once again. I hope the interest sticks. I hope it will for me. I'm really interested right now. I hope it stays that way. Speaking of regional championships, though, a really big competitive play announcement over this last week was that starting in with the last regional championship of 2024, regional championship Washington, D.C., I might go, who knows, readily easy to get to. They will, instead of being hosted by the event company DreamHack like they have been for the last few years, for better or for ill, by how most people would tell it, for ill, they will now be hosted by a company you may have heard of before, Dan, and that is Star City Games. Have you heard of Star City Games?
No, never. It sounds like this company SCG that used to run these events, that they really hosted a lot of my favorite events in the past, actually.
Yeah, I remember this company, SCG. They had like awesome coverage for these massive GPs, these incredible
Amazing, like, old players
invitational
and
events.
commentators.
Yeah, like that, those like Cedric Phillips and P. Sully guys.
I've
Exactly.
heard of them.
Yeah, exactly. They run a podcast called The Receivables or something. I don't know. But yeah,
Many people say that we're the ripoff of the Receivables. Have you heard that?
no, I haven't. I can't say I've
That's a
heard
thing
that
I
one.
just made up, but hopefully
I was
this
like,
will like drum up some controversy.
your podcast where you chat about recent Magic news and then interview someone. That reminds me of a very well produced YouTube show where people talk about old Magic sets.
Hey, we're very well produced. Don't mess with my producer Callahan like that.
Yeah, shout out to producer Cal Jones, director Cal Jones. Anyways, so yeah, I'm pretty hype about this. I know a lot of people have been kind of down on SCG post lockdown, and I think for good reason. The events aren't what they used to be. Granted, the incentive around events for SCG aren't what they used to be. There's no coverage anymore. They let go a lot of the people who had written competitive content for them for forever. They let go those people internally too. So, um, I know some people, they find it hard to be optimistic about SCG taking over the RCs because,
Mm.
well, at least DreamHack is a company that's run a lot of huge events over the last couple of years, and even if they didn't do the RCs well, they could run a Magic event. Here's the thing: SCG still runs really good Magic events in my experience. They just don't have an invitational anymore, so people haven't been showing up to them.
Yeah, and I think another thing is that, like, as long as these events go well and people show up to them, like, it will continue to give SCG incentive to go back to those old things, like making coverage and making articles and exclusive content and things like that, that, like, were part of just the Magic ethos, like 5 or so years ago.
Yeah, that's like my moonshot hope is like, oh, SCG gets to run these RCs. So they're running them for the 24 to 25 season and then also for the 25 to 26 season. So we will have SCG running regional championships through at least mid to late 2026. Which is about when Wilds of Eldraine will be rotating out of standard, in case you're interested, Dan.
Wait, is that real?
I think so.
Amazing.
I'm Googling it. It is true. Rotates out September 2026. Wilds of Eldraine, The Lost Caverns of Ixalan.
That's
Murders
incredible.
at Karlov Manor. It's not Karlov. Yes, it is Karlov. No,
I was gonna say I think so. I was just looking at it.
it's not Markov. It's Karlov.
No,
There
yes,
we go.
Karlov.
And then also the spring 2024 set, which is Bloomburrow. Those will all be rotating out in September 2026. And then the next rotation is not until September 2027. So kind of sick. So
Yeah.
at the same time when SCG is done with regional championships, maybe, we will no longer be able to play this Reckless Vents I just picked up off my desk in standard.
I was going to be so impressed that you could name a card from Wilds of Eldraine. Actually, I also have one in front of me. Up the
Beanstalk. That's I can name a lot of cards from Wilds of Eldraine. I have loved that set, and I also drafted it a lot. But Blooming Tortoise, Domain All-Star. Actually, it's no longer Domain. Anyways, yes, SCG is going to be hosting these regional championships. I have high hopes for them. They've done a lot of good with events in the past. And my hope is, since this is like, at this point, at least a multi-year commitment, it will help galvanize SCG back into kind of the old, be incentivized to support competitive play a lot because they are being incentivized by Wizards to support competitive play a lot. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it should be like a good symbiotic relationship. Like you said, it's a big contract. So, like, obviously, this is a large monetary investment coming from Wizards. It should hopefully give SCG what they need to get back to that standard. Because, like I said, like, SCG coverage and SCG events are just like bread and butter Magic for me. It's like flabbergasting to me that it's not the world that we live in right now.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the major changes in the Magic landscape that has understandably made a swath of people who have been around for a long time say, not even a long time, say like 5 years plus, which I guess in the grand scheme of things is a long time, but in the grand scheme of a third of the context of a 30-year game isn't that long. That's what Magic was for a very long time, was hopping on your computer on Saturday afternoon, and you know what you could always do if you had nothing else going on? You could watch Cedric and P. Sully at the whatever SCG event was going on that weekend. You could watch, I don't know, Paul Cheon talk to whoever they put in the booth with him that weekend at some GP, and read any article you want about any standard or modern deck that have been published that week, because there was something written about everything every week on some website. You could always find it. And
yeah, exactly. I feel like we're in a space now where like we said, like standard hasn't been interesting in so long, because like where would the interest even come from? Really, right? Like it has to be player invested, because we don't have any incentive for like these professional circuits to be really focusing their attention on standard or anything like that right now. And yeah, I think it's just part of what gives not only competitive Magic, but just like current Magic a huge part of its identity, when we have more people really like thinking and writing and talking about it more often.
Exactly. And that also gives Spikes a place to live in the Magic ecosystem, which, not to say that Spikes shouldn't play other parts of formats that aren't spiky, but
well, I mean, for Spikes it might not interest them.
Yeah, exactly, it might not interest them, and it's good for them to have a place to play Magic the Gathering in a way that they enjoy.
Yeah, like personally, I'm not a very spiky person by nature. Yeah. I'm not very interested in tournaments, and like I'm sort of like, it doesn't really matter to me what's going on in the competitive scene so much. I'm very interested in the competitive scenes, but like I'm not going to compete in them, so like it doesn't matter to me so much on that axis. But for people on the opposite end of the spectrum, again, it's sort of like a directionless time in Magic's history.
And hopefully this will help get them some direction again. Of course, this all also, it entirely counts on SCG doing well, which I totally hope they will. Hope to see them bring a great coverage team in and get some eyes on the RCs. And
I hope it's us.
Dan, Cal, noted 60 card Magic commentary duo coming up, coming to you.
Dan, I don't really care about competitive formats. The Gathering.
Moderately, I don't care about anything in Magic, Anonymous. So yeah, if we get out of this, the real pipe, my real pipe dream is that through this we get some route back to something like the SCG Invitational. It's really cool that Nerd Rage Gaming, NRG, they've been doing their series and their Invitational over the past couple of years, and that has given a great outlet to people who are looking for that for the last couple of years. But it's I think there's something a little bit, and Apex Gaming here in my own local Ohio has been doing some of that too, on a smaller scale. There's just
Anurag Das been traveling around the country and doing his own coverage of events.
Exactly. There's just
there's
just something
it's a lot different. There's just
than something that
company.
Feels a little bit different about the SCG tour,
Yeah, there's just more resources, more manpower, better technology. Just like, yeah, if we can put it in bigger hands, it'll probably be better.
Yep, exactly. All right, moving on. Speaking of huge events and managing things well, the one really big thing, unfortunately, that happened, I think, over the last 2 weeks that isn't directly related to like dry Magic news, was the recent CubeCon fallout. For those of you who don't know, CubeCon was a really slick event that was put on in Wisconsin the last 2 years, where people got together for the weekend and just jammed cubes. A whole bunch of cube lovers got together and did all things cubes. They came up with a really cool main event structure where you got to jam different cubes for the main event, and depending on how you did in those, you got standings in an entire main event, and then there was like a top 8 draft or something in a winner of CubeCon. Exciting stuff. But as what are ostensibly passion projects like CubeCon was, apparently, everything fell apart. There's disputes at the top level amongst the people who ran it. both over business and over the handling of a sexual harassment claim, which, here at the Herald's Horn, I would say that we believe survivors. So, uh, it was very obvious that nothing around CubeCon was handled well. That was my takeaway from the entire scenario. It was a group of friends doing things passionately, each just doing their own thing, each handling their own business type of thing, and they did everything by 8-person consensus, which is crazy, with no legal overhead, and all of the money went to one person's bank account who just handled the money, and it was a personal bank account of the person who ran it. So now 2 members of the original team have split off with the CubeCon branding and whatnot and are going to continue it on. I don't know what the rest of the team's doing. It just stinks that this kind of stuff seems to happen a lot in the Magic the Gathering community. CubeCon was an awesome event. I wish that the team behind it could have handled their business better, had done better by a sexual harassment victim who very bravely came forward to speak to it about the judge that they were working under. And then they ended up, having to felt pressured to post about it publicly, which should never be the case because they had done it all anonymously up until that point. And I don't know. It's just bad.
Yeah, it's just a really unfortunate situation. You would obviously hope in any sort of public gathering scenario that you can ensure the safety of your guests, and it really stinks that that's not what happened. Yeah, it's very unfortunate.
Exactly. Ideally, they would have been able to protect their guests, protect their staff, and also handle it well after the fact. And they failed at all 3 of those things, and also failed at running a competent business at the same time. And now a really cool
when you
event
describe
has
their
fallen apart.
Structure,
yeah,
when you describe their business structure as such, that's not anything that I knew about personally before you just said that to me right now. And I can understand there being pitfalls. Not to take anything away from the victim of this, that really sucks, obviously. But yeah, very unfortunate. Just an unfortunate happening.
Exactly. I hope the shortcomings of several people will not end up depriving the Cube community of what was a very bright part for Cube. Cube is very up and coming Magic the Gathering format, which feels weird to say because it has been pretty popular for the last few years at minimum. But now, especially with Daybreak Games pushing Vintage Cube and other cubes so hard on Magic the Gathering Online, Wizards posting a lot of different cubes on Arena, more and more people making their own cubes and being more vocal about it. And there's more and more cube content. We have cube videos on the Profs channel on Shuffle Up and Play. Got Ryan Overturf writing about cube every single week, just about, for SCG. Feels like it's one of the cool up and coming casual / spiky formats. And it would be a shame for that community to lose something so cool so soon in the community's, I don't want to say community's infancy, but they had their first major event for the last 2 years. Legs, yeah. So I hope the community can figure something out.
Yeah, because it is a very unique sort of event for that sphere, and something that feels pretty unifying and pretty what's the word I'm looking for? I guess as legitimizing in the way that when we as CEDH players see these bigger CEDH events happening, like 5Ks at SCGs and things that's something that feels really legitimizing about the way that you like to play Magic. And yeah, it's very unfortunate in that regard that CubeCon was not what people needed it to be. So yeah, hopefully they can get that together, because it is a really awesome way to play Magic, and I hope that more people bring light to that community, because it's a really cool one.
I agree. And everyone listening, you should just go play Vintage Cube on Magic the Gathering online. Oh my god, don't get me started.
We could that can be the whole interview. I could talk about that for hours. Interview.
Well, Dan, I did want to ask you, what have you been excited about recently? What have you been enjoying with Magic the Gathering? Here on the podcast, we have so far pretty much talked about whatever I have written down and bring forward, and then asked y'all about your opinions on. But what have you been excited about recently with Magic the Gathering?
I am actually like sort of coming back to playing Magic after a small hiatus of not really streaming at all for October and November. I'm usually streaming CEDH at least 2 times, sometimes maybe 3 times a week. So usually playing a ton of Magic. But yeah, took a nice long break, but coming back to it now, I've started up my 2024 stats sheet for my CEDH playing, where I'm going to record it every one of my games. Take a look at different stats about opening hands, seat position, and things like that. It's something that like really keeps me invested in all my games, so I'm really excited about that. Been playing a ton of Cons of Tarkir draft that has been on Arena. That has been something that's honestly been consuming me. I'll run like 2 to 3 drafts a night if I have the time for it. It's just so incredibly fun. I'm loving that draft format, and also had a very nice hot long streak on the Vintage Cube as well. I've just been enjoying the heck out of some limited.
You know, Dan, I'm in the exact same boat as you. I talked about this a little bit on the last episode in that regard, but limited is just kind of awesome.
It's my favorite way to play, I think, Magic at this point. I love 1v1 Magic, and it's like unfortunate that I don't get to play more of it, but being able to play limited on the online clients is a godsend.
You playing Cons just on Arena?
Yes, it recently they did like a Cons remastered on Arena that came out a few weeks ago. I think it's still running for the next couple of weeks as we're recording this. But yes, widely regarded as one of the best limited formats of all time by people who are much smarter than I am. I almost understand it. And I think I get where they're coming from, because there's so many elements of a good limited set. And I think Cons hits it pretty well in that a lot of the really great things about that draft come from the common slots, which, like, being really heavily weighted towards the rares always feels really bad and really lopsided when you're just in your average draft. And all of the rares are like kind of intrinsically balanced by the fact that so many of them are 3 colors, or even if they're double pips of the same color, it's kind of really hard to get your colors correct in that draft. And again, to talk about Vintage Cube again, I love that drafting lands is like a very critical part of Cons drafting.
Yeah, actually, like, you could very reasonably like pack one, pick one, a Triome or a fetch land out of a lot of packs, and nobody would be
People are
upset
smart about
that.
it too on Arena. I noticed that sometimes when I'm like, I could be greedy and take this like 3 mana common and try to wheel this dual land. The dual lands do not come back.
No.
People will first pick them a lot of the time on the pack picks.
It's like the one thing I know about Vintage Cube from watching LSV's channel and stuff a lot, and jamming it myself too, is like you'll never actually be in danger of not having threats or whatever. You just have to be able to cast them. And mana is very helpful at doing that.
Speaking of Paul Cheon's new YouTube channel, I just saw the video that he put up today of him drafting with LSV.
With LSV,
and they have that exact conversation about like they're pretty deep in pack 3, and LSV is like, take this Shockland, and Cheon is like, no,
I need
like,
cards.
We need like 4 more playables. Yeah. And LSV is like, well, there's 5 more cards in this pack.
Yeah, like, it'll come together. You're playing 5 color. It'll work out.
But no, being able to cast your spells is goated. I agree.
Yeah, I like casting my spells. You like casting your spells?
Feels good. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Well, on that note, how about some spells you can cast when you buy them? It's time for the product watch.
I was in my mind like flipping it up. Where is he going with this? What is this a transition to? You got me on that one.
Welcome to the one recurring segment we still have on the Herald's Horn podcast, and that is the product watch, where we talk about Magic the Gathering products that have been announced or released in the 2 weeks since we last released an episode of the Herald's Horn. It's always a shocking amount, except for last episode when we had nothing to talk about.
I wasn't going to call you out, but
big one upcoming this weekend. Ravnica Remastered is finally releasing. It feels like we've been hearing about this set for like 6 months, probably because we have been. Shocklands are cheap. Buy them. It's the only thing I have to say about this set. Shocklands are like $10 to $14 right now. That is the cheapest they will be for a long time. Buy your Shocklands if you need them.
All right, so wait, here's my thing that everyone can clip and then post about on social media. My prediction publicly on one of Emma Partlow's tweets is that I think that Shocks will bottom out between $3 to $5.
That's crazy. That's a lot lower than they are at this exact second.
Well, set has just released.
That's true.
people do need their shocklands,
Mhm.
but they appear to be so common in these packs and boxes that I feel like, and the fact that there's like 2 to 3 different printings of them in these
Yes,
boxes.
there's the normal, like normal art with normal art. There is the retro border, which are actually kind of on some of them the cheapest version right now. And then there's
Interesting.
also the borderless treatment. So yeah,
Right.
actually, if you're opening up especially collector boosters, you have a lot of shots at different shocklands across your packs, across your different slots, because there's normal, there's borderless, there's retro. Granted, that's the case for a lot of the rares, but still, you're gonna open like
It does
a
drive the price
weirdly,
down inherently,
yeah,
though.
exactly. Well, I was a little bit of an aside. I was just writing about my favorite legendary creatures found within the set that I thought were like exciting for normal EDH decks, and for almost all of them across the board, the retro and borderless are the cheapest ones, which is fascinating. Like
That is
Karlov,
really interesting.
normal printing of Karlov, $8, retro, 5. And it was like very, very much that way across the set. Probably because you can open more retro and borderless ones in collector boosters than you can normal printings. And these kind of sets, a lot more people are going to be opening up collector boosters looking for the cool versions and like serialized cards rather than cracking draft boosters. But
yeah, that's fair, because this is not a standard set.
that is correct. Yeah, this is just like a premium reprint sets, cards from all of the Ravnica sets. But
I was wondering if maybe that's like a general consensus now that people don't like old borders, which, like, I don't know. There's many new Magic players. I'm also a big fan of them. But there's enough new Magic players where I if you told me that, I could believe it, that like the average new player is like, no, I don't understand or identify with old borders. I don't like them.
I think I would say, I think there is a kernel in me that could admit that retro borders are kind of objectively ugly.
I think that's part of their charm. Like the puke colored, multicolored, like from Invasion sort of era, those multicolored cards. I live for that puke colored card. I have like proxy Timnin Thrasios with a puke colored border because I love them so much.
Yes, exactly. All of that rocks. I'm a big fan. I'm also a big fan of Murder at Karlov Manor. The preview season officially started today. Pre-releases on February 2nd. Set comes out February 9th. It seems like a fun set. Investigate as a tentpole mechanic again. I always love Investigate being a tentpole mechanic of a set. Weird variants of Morph, whatever. It's Morph. It looks like a Magic set.
Yeah, it looks I don't know. It doesn't look like it's for me in particular, but it does look fun. I love limited. So I mean, yeah, everything you're saying is correct.
Yeah,
Morph is cool.
It is.
Drawing cards in limited is cool.
I think it's one of the first sets they've done in a while that isn't. It is very thematic, but it's not themed around a very thematic plane. Like a lot of the really thematic sets we've had are like, here is the Gothic horror plane, and therefore, since the entire world is Gothic horror, so are the cards. This one is like, here on Ravnica, we're having a murder mystery, and everything is murder mystery-y, but it's in Ravnica. So, I don't know. I think the theme hasn't really hit for me, but it's hit for a lot of other people. The thing I'm really looking forward to with this set is that it is our first instance of the Play Booster product.
Yes, I'm very interested to see how this plays out.
Yep, the combination, for listeners who don't know, for Murder at Karlov Manor, they are rolling together the set booster and the draft booster, essentially creating two main boosters. We'll have the collector booster for all the bougie stuff, and then we'll have the play booster, which is both supposed to be a functional game piece for drafting sealed, the limited formats, while also being a more interesting pack to open up and have like a pleasant pack opening experience where you can get exciting stuff, more so than the draft booster was. If you've played Magic for a while and you're just cracking packs, the experience of opening a draft booster is cracking it open, counting your commons to see if you got 9 of them and therefore a foil, or 10 of them, and then immediately setting aside to look at your rare and your foil if there is one, and then moving on to the next pack.
Is this a standard playable rare or an eternal playable rare? Okay.
Yes, no.
Next pack.
It's not a dual land. Next pack. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is their combination. Trying to figure that out. You can get up to 4 rares in a pack. It's not very likely, but it can happen. Cool. It's 14 cards instead of 15 cards, including the ad card and whatnot. And there is also a guaranteed foil. So we no longer have packs that don't have foils in them, which is interesting, I guess. Because the draft boosters used to be like 1 in 6.
Yeah, I think that sounds correct. I think this is also the first time that we've had 14 card packs in a very long time.
Yeah, it's been 15
can't think of like another modern era set.
Extremely long time. Yeah. Well, we had the Aftermath set recently, which also had a non-standard number of cards, but it wasn't 14. So.
Oh, I missed that one. I guess
that's March of the Machine Aftermath. That one.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this from a limited perspective with the up to 4 rares. Seems like what I talked about earlier with the cons drafting of like, if you have a lot of weight in your rare slot in your packs, it makes for really lopsided limited games. Up to 4 rares is so ambiguous with like where they can be, and I think that's spread out amongst like all of the different, like maybe even including that like possible list slot.
Yes,
so
that is correct.
I'm not sure. Yeah. So it seems like it would be hard to get all 4 of your rares, but even if you're getting 2 rares in a pack,
yeah, that's pretty good.
Rares.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, and especially if you're doing like traditional in-store within pod drafting, where you all 8 of you draft from the packs and then all of you play against each other, not versus other people with different card pools, that could like really up the power level of the average draft pod.
Yes,
sick.
I think so, which like I guess I'm not inherently against, because limited is an inherently slow format. But I don't know, the modern limited environment doesn't seem so slow that like I would go as far as say like we need another rare.
Exactly. Commons are so good these days. It's all real fast. I'll take it though. I've been learning to love limited more and more, and hopefully that'll continue with Murder at Karlov Manor. The last thing,
I'm excited to see what happens.
Same. The last thing for our product Rotch is another secret lair. Can I get some applause, please? Can I get some applause?
Oh my god, it's another secret lair. Oh my god.
This is a commander deck, Raining Cats and Dogs. It's another secret lair commander deck. These have not historically been a good value, like monetarily, because they're kind of overpriced, and they're a pre-con that Wizards makes. So like, there's some cool reprints and stuff, but much like all the other ones, the main appeal of this one is that it has some really slick art in it. Specifically, a bunch of double-sided commander staples that have a cat-themed art on one side, and a dog-themed art on the other side. That's kind of cute. It's kind of quirky. I'll probably buy the ones I want as singles if I really want one. The biggest reprint they've shown off so far, I believe, is Anointed Procession. That's like a $50 Tokens Matters card, so we take those. But
yeah, I'm honestly surprised we don't see more cats and dog sets, because I feel like you could slap a cat or a dog on. They do it on a basic and people go wild for it. Like, why don't they just do that all the time? I don't get it.
I agree.
I've never heard of the word product fatigue.
What's product fatigue? Can you explain it to me?
It doesn't exist.
And that's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening to this half of the Herald's Horn. And the second half of the Herald's Horn will be a little bit different this week because, well, I'm just going to be joined by Dan again. But instead of talking about their hatred for Magic the Gathering, we're going to be talking about Dan. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. This is where your sponsor spot could be if you want to reach our audience and helping me pay the bills, helping me pay my co-hosts, all that good stuff. If you're interested at all, reach out to me at editorial@heraldshorn.com. Thanks so much. And welcome back to the second half of the show, where I chat with somebody about them, about what they're doing, about Magic the Gathering. We're just having a great conversation. I'm picking someone's brain. And much as the last 2 episodes where I talked to Emma and then talked to Lexi, we are on the final of our co-host team today, and that is Dan, aka Moderately Anonymous. Dan, I asked you how you were doing up top, but how are you doing now?
I'm doing great. Hello, trumpeters. How are we doing today?
Trumpeters, one day we'll figure out a great tag name for
I'm
the
just going to keep
fans.
saying some until we
Trumpeters,
find one.
I totally forgot. I went back and looked at the Patreon that I set up and haven't really advertised at all yet that much. And by not yeah, exactly. And the one tier I have set up, I just named in the moment Trumpeters. So maybe you are already winning.
Well, here's the thing about that though, is it's very close to Trumpers.
You started saying Trumpeters, and I was like, is Dan about to make a Trump joke right now?
Hello, Trump Nation.
What is up, my Trumpers? How we feel about that Iowa primary?
On this 10 days after the anniversary of our favorite day.
Anyway. Dan, today we are here to talk about you. We're here to pick your brain a little bit so the audience can get to know you a little bit more beyond just the jokes I make about you hating Magic the Gathering, which Dan does not hate Magic the Gathering. It's true. Dan, you obviously love Magic the Gathering. How did you first get involved playing Magic the Gathering?
Playing, I first got involved with after college. In college, I was a very big fan of drinking what is colloquially known as beer and playing a game that is colloquially known as cribbage. That's what me and my old friends used to do. It's a great time. I really enjoy playing card games of all variety. So I moved in with these crust punks after college, and they did not know how to play cribbage, but they all knew how to play Magic the Gathering, and I was like, card games is card games, so let's do it. Yeah, and I dove into this box of just commons and uncommons, and I built myself a Delver of Secrets and Kiln Fiend deck with, I want to say, Hypersonic Dragon. Do you know that one at the top end? Because you need a big monster to finish out games.
I do not know Hypersonic Dragon. Do you know its rules text off the top of your head?
Yes, it is a flying 4/4 for 3, and is it mana? You can cast sorceries as though they were instants.
Oh, yeah, that's from Return of Ravnica, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, my very first set. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so you were a card gamer, and then you became a card gamer. Is that what
now I'm just a regular gamer.
Is that what you would say? Now you're just a regular gamer? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair enough. Any big games on the horizon recently? You've been doing any
so here's the thing that
gaming?
People know about me. I do love Magic the Gathering. I'm not a very big fan of other games in general. I'm not much of like a tabletop gamer. I'm a very big video gamer. I've been delving extremely deeply into the world of Fallout 4 recently. I think I've spent roughly 50 hours of the past month playing Fallout 4.
I was just thinking about Fallout 4 because I opened up my Steam today to play Stardew Valley with my wife. And Steam was like, here's the most popular game in your library that you've never started up, Fallout 4. And I was like, oh, you're so right. I've never played Fallout 4. So true, bestie.
Oh, wow. The opening sequence is a real heartbreaker. It's very emotionally involved.
Oh, that maybe I probably like started it up on my Xbox 360 once and then was like, this is too sad for me right now. I'm depressed in high school. And then turned it off.
But no, highly suggest Fallout 4 if you haven't played it very deeply before. Very rich game, especially as someone who is from the Boston area, being able to like see the actual places and everything. Hey, it's very fun.
I lived there before they blew it up with nuclear bombs.
Exactly. I know what the swan guy gag is about.
I don't.
There's like little swan paddling boats all over the place. So there's a big swan monster. Someone who is fused with one of the swan boats.
That's very funny. Okay. That's very funny.
Yeah.
So you play a lot of Magic, right? You play a lot of other games. You're a big gamer, fellow Nintendo GameCube enjoyer, allegedly, from what I understand.
Allegedly, yes. Not quite as an illustrious collection as yourself, but games that I love very near and dear to my heart that I have.
I think that's a much more normal way to engage with the Nintendo GameCube. Like,
well, I don't know. I just bought 2 games for $15 a piece that I was like, I don't really give a shit about these, but I'll throw them in.
That's where I'm at now because I'm trying to get to the complete North American collection. So now
I don't want that at all.
All of the games I have, I like own all of the good games. I own like the 60 good Nintendo GameCube games, and now there's the other 400 GameCube games.
Yeah, there's way too many. It's like I collect records and I collect books and I collect lots of heavy things, and I don't need more heavy collecting.
Exactly. So you enjoy Magic the Gathering, you enjoy these other things, but it takes, especially like pre a year and a half ago or whatever, I think a lot less people who enjoy Magic the Gathering make the jump to, oh, I should make content about it. How did you make that jump? Because from what I recall, you've kind of been around the block for a little bit. Is that true?
Yes, I've been making content on Instagram for probably close to 6 years now.
Yeah.
And that started when I started getting more heavily invested in my collection.
The little known Instagram scene. That's just like, I mean, it's not little known. There's a lot of Magic the Gathering players on Instagram, but it's just like, it's been my one blind spot, I think. What goes on over there?
I think it is the most forgotten about space for Magic fans, because like I have 6,000 followers on Instagram, which I think like in terms of like all of the places you could have 6,000 followers, it's the least valuable one.
It is so weird because like you can't post links very easily, and I don't know. It's a strange platform.
Frankly, the like general user base skews younger and more problematic. There are a lot of 13-year-old Redditors on Instagram. I've received more hate mail through Instagram than any other platform.
Why did you start creating on Instagram? Like, how did this happen? Like, you've been doing it for a while, but 6 years ago, what made you say, I have got to post about Magic the Gathering on Instagram.com?
The very literal thing was that I went through this period where I had a big, large binder full of Commander playable rares that were between like $5 and $10, and I was like, I must have enough money in here to buy a Gaia's Cradle. And I did. So I sold it all to Card Kingdom, bought a Gaia's Cradle, and then I had this awesome Gaia's Cradle, and I would just get out my little magnifying glass and I would look at it and appreciate the art. And I really had no one to talk to, but that was 100% me. I have the magnifying glass somewhere around here still. But yeah, I just didn't have anyone in my hometown that I was super into Magic with. My roommates at the time had sort of grown out of it. I didn't spend a whole lot of time at the LGS, but like, not enough to like really... bring down the Gaia's Cradle and just show it off and like have fun with people or whatever. You know, I'd go there like once a week or a couple times a month or something like that. But I wanted to show off this Gaia's Cradle, and I was like, that's what people do on Instagram, so that's what I'll do.
That makes a lot of sense. And then you did that for a while. I assume, did you meet Alan through that? I know Alan. Yes. Alan got his start over on Instagram.com as well.
This is a story that I think I told on another podcast, but the way that Alan and I met was that I saw his Instagram account and I thought he was funny and cool. So I started sharing his photos and tagging the FBI and telling them to arrest this man because I thought that was funny, and he DM'd me and he was like, please don't do that.
Alan, of course, being Mental Misplay, another notable CEDH streamer. That is deeply funny. That is deeply funny to me, Dan.
Thank you. I thought it was funny,
too. I can also get why Alan would be like, hey, don't do that.
Of course.
Please stop sending the FBI tips about where you can find me.
But how else do you make friends in the digital age, I question?
Mocking them online.
It worked for us.
Exactly. No, it's so true, actually, until everyone stopped mocking me when at like 2 o'clock in the morning, I posted a tweet that was like, everyone, please stop making fun of me. It's not fun anymore.
It always comes to that point, doesn't it?
The rest was history. Now no one talks to me anymore.
So sensitive.
Dude, you have this Instagram thing going. You're eating people like Alan. I assume you like run into Rebel over there too, maybe at some point in time. I know she was on Instagram for a long time. But
yeah, because Rebel was part of the ranking.
Oh gosh, that's crazy. But ostensibly, eventually, this was like a CEDH thing for you, right? Was it a CEDH kind of account the whole time, or?
No, back in the day, it was strictly art analysis. Okay. I would post pictures of cards and do little, maybe like 150 to 200 character art analysis pieces on them.
That's honestly kind of awesome.
That's what I did for years and years.
That's kind of awesome. I think that's like an underdone part of Magic the Gathering content to this point. I know there's like 1 or 2 people who write about it for, there was someone writing about it for Hipsters of the Coast. RIP. I hope they come back soon. Mm-hmm. And I know there's also someone writing about it now for Commander's Herald from time to time. I think that's just underexplored space. Not saying that there needs to be like content about anything or about everything about Magic the Gathering, but for how awesome every single piece pretty much in Magic the Gathering is, I feel like there should be more purposeful thinking about it, maybe.
Yeah, I think that like people like Sam from Mystic Studies were like a huge inspiration for me in that kind of regard. And yeah, I feel the same way. I wish more people would spend more time talking about how awesome Magic the Gathering art is, because we would definitely see less AI art if that were the truth, in my opinion.
So true. Have you ever thought about returning to it? Do you still do it secretly on the side?
On Instagram, no, not really. I have to start getting back into Instagram because that's where sort of the social media attention is shifting towards. But yeah, I think I'm gonna start getting back to it, honestly, because it was always a fun thing to do. I think I spent a little bit too much time doing it for too long. Like if I had switched to Twitter earlier, I think I could be making bigger strides at the moment. But yeah, it's fun content to do.
So now where your specialty lies, where you think about what you do a lot of, is competitive EDH, and then also often normal Commander as well, streaming and thinking and tweeting and thoughting, if you will. Big CDH thought leader, Dan.
Oh, thank you. It's very, very kind of you.
Of course. But how did we make that jump? You know, you're doing art on Instagram, and then you said, "Oh, it's time to stream CDH." Actually,
well, I got to the beginning of the Panini, I was in the group chat with Alan, Rebel, and a bunch of other Instagram content creators. And I want to say it was our buddy Casual Jake, if you've ever heard of him, person who has stopped streaming as of present. But I think Jake was the first one of us to get onto Twitch and start doing some Twitch streaming, and that inspired me and Alan to do the same. And Alan and I sort of had like a similar trajectory of like really thinking about CDH in particular, and how like 3 or 4 years ago, like people like hated CDH players so much more than they do now. I'm sure there's a bunch of people who still feel poorly about us. But yeah, the attitude was like there was never going to be an SCG Con 5K 3 or 4 years ago for sure. LSV would not be mentioning Dockside Extortionist and CDH on his YouTube channel 5 years ago. So yeah, we both had that similar approach of just like when we play CDH, we have a lot of fun, and we can be bringing that to other people. We really want to like change the attitude that people have about CDH players just being like pub stompers with their heads up their butts.
Are you not a pub stomper who has their head up their butt?
I enjoy myself a top 4 competitive deck very much.
Played amongst decks of equal power rating. 7.
Well, I don't know. You know, I like wiener jokes too. It's the full spectrum. I think that space exists for both, because I think still we have sort of that idea of like, if you play Timnon Crom, you're a butthead. And I am a butthead, but I'm a different kind of butthead.
No, that certainly makes sense. That certainly makes sense. And you're trying to keep that butthead energy alive on stream every time you stream.
Yeah, for the most part. I have started streams earlier now. I am changing my schedule so that I'm less of a very sleepy boy on stream, complaining about it being past my bedtime.
Bad news. It still runs into my bedtime. That's why I'm not on anymore.
Well, get on the daytime stream.
That's true. Daytime stream. I have a job.
Barely.
It's recording the Herald Horn.
We could be doing that while we play.
An episode of the Herald Horn while we play CDH. Running that. I
really want to get you and Emma and Lexi all on the show at the same time, but I feel like that would be hard to schedule.
That'd be a lot of fun. It'd be hard to schedule. As we've already, as listeners may come to learn, this show is a little bit hard to schedule as is. That's why we only have Dan today. It's a little bit hard to schedule. We'll see how that goes in the future as things change. But you know, if Emma moves to the US, if that ever happens, if Lexi gets a job with a different schedule, if you get a job with a less flexible schedule, if I get a job with a less schedule, if we all move to Emma's apartment in the UK, we all pile in. Dan and I can share
Herald
the couch.
Horn HQ.
You know, it'll be a great time. But Dan, this interview's about you. We're talking about you. You can't keep deflecting away from you. I know you're so shocked So shocked. This is all about you. But actually, I don't have many questions about you. That's on me. That's my bad. But I did want to pick your brain a little bit, Dan. I know a great uh beyond, we've chatted about GameCubes, we chatted about Magic the Gathering, but also you're one of the few people whose like music taste I trust, in that you like send me something and I'll just listen to it immediately, where most people who send me things, I'm like, oh cool,
I'll listen to
yeah,
this
I'll
later
listen to
for
this
sure.
later, and then I do like 70% of the time. But you have 100% hit rate. And I
Nice.
know you also play music as well. What do you like about music, Dan? Is that the most generic question I can ask you? What is it about music that just does it for you?
It's the notes
It's
for
the
me.
notes. I would.
No, yeah, I'm a lifelong musician, and it's been something that I have continually found to be like a very grounding and centering presence in my life, and something that has been really fun to focus on. As I was growing up like a guitar player, I was very many like long nights spent in front of my computer reading tabs and trying to learn Between the Buried and Me licks and stuff like that.
Ambitious.
Yeah, I know.
Ambitious. Dan Briggs is a god in my household.
He's too
He's
good.
too good.
Oh my god, he's way too good. I don't even listen to BT Band prior to him being there. I'm not a fan of like Alaska and whatever the other one is.
I don't even remember either. I guess that it's like I know what the art
Is
looks
it
like.
self-titled?
No, it's called something else, I think. Gosh, I
Remember.
forgot he wasn't on Alaska too.
Yeah, he came on in Colors, and I think that was their third album.
That is correct. It is their
Yeah.
It is their third album.
But yeah, over the last year, I have been getting into percussion again too, which has been really great. It's honestly really reinvigorated my love of music. I sort of like fell out with it over the pandemic, just got so heavily involved with my depression that it sort of just stripped the joy of all of my activities away from me, pretty much. I did not care about writing or playing music at all. And yeah, getting back into percussion and drumming again has been an awesome force in my life over the past year.
That makes so much sense. I totally relate. I totally get it. Music is just awesome. Being able to play music is awesome. And it's great. It's like a great productive mental way to spend your time focusing on something, learning things, doing something for you is, I think, a great way that music can be an outlet for people. And I'm glad you're back to it. I'm trying to get back to it. I need to get back to it.
It can be difficult to do because, like, I don't know if everyone feels this way, but I definitely find it to be a hugely meditative process. And any meditative process is definitely like, it can be a hump getting over that like uncomfortability of just like sitting with yourself in that space.
Like sitting with yourself in the space, going, all right, I'm gonna suck at this for a long time until I don't. And once I stop,
even when you're good at like picking up my guitar now, I'm like, am I really going to sit here and play the same song that I played 10 million times before? Like, I don't really want to.
Yeah. But if you want to play something else, you're going to have to suck at it. Bad news. Well, not completely suck at it, but
no, it's like a ground level of like, I can sight read anything with chords and impress people, which is fun.
Exactly. Sight reading. Yeehaw! One of these days I need to get back to playing the piano. That's my number one Magic the Gathering community secret that nobody knows about me. I'm a
I didn't know you were a piano player either.
Collegiate level classical pianist.
Oh, very nice. That's the one instrument I've always wanted to play.
Until I burnt out on it and stopped, and I have barely touched a piano for the last 4 years. So
it's so hard to get back to it. You gotta really find that. Like,
I have to sit down with myself and say, all right, all the things that you used to be able to do, you can't do it anymore, but you're just going to do this for the sake of doing it, and it's going to be great. And I haven't gotten there.
It's also at a certain point, I feel like when you're training with it too, there is a part of your brain that stops associating it with the fun aspect that you like initially started with, where it's just like really just like muscle memory and that rote completion sort of desire that like, yeah, when you can find something that you can like feel a little bit confident in, but also be a little bit sloppy at and like jam with other people and stuff like that, like that really unlocks that sort of, oh yeah, this is the fun part about
this is actually great.
Being a musician.
Yeah, I do all the boring stuff so I can do this. Exactly. Well, Dan, thanks for chatting with me for a few moments about me and about you. I'm glad you're getting back into music. I'm glad you're here being one of the few remaining consistent CEDH streamers. It's great for the space. and you host a great place for everyone to come and watch CDH and have a great time and all that. And I also do have a correction for both of us. After the release of Silent Circus, their third studio album, they assembled the lineup for their third album. BT Bam assembled the lineup for their third album. Oh, Silent Circus is the second one. My bad. Third album, Alaska, did have Dan Briggs on it, I believe.
Oh,
from best I can tell.
Well, then I just don't like that album.
That's fair. I like the introduction of the titular song, and then I skip the rest of the album.
I think I've heard them play Selkies live once, and that's like most
of
what I've heard of that album.
Well, all right. On our way out, Dan, anything else to add about you?
Yeah, find me on Twitch. I'm there every Monday at noon, Wednesday at 8 p.m., and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And go follow me on Twitch. I'm a thought leader, or Twitter rather.
Thank you for joining me, CEDH Thought Leader and Herald's Horn co-host. The Herald's Horn. Well,
that was the horn.
Well, thank you for joining me, CEDH Thought Leader and Herald's Horn co-host Dan. Now all of my easy interviews are out of the way. Wish me luck in the future.
I refuse to, but good luck anyway.
Thank you so much for listening to the second episode of The Herald's Horn. I am Cal. I make this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You have no idea how much it means to me that you are willing to sit down and listen to this little passion project of mine. If you want to help me or my co-hosts pay their bills, we have a Patreon. It's real small. We haven't done much with it yet, but it's going to be linked in the podcast description. We are also looking for sponsors. If you're interested in that, reach out to me at editorial@heraldshorn.com. Special shout out to Dan for sitting down with me this episode. And, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen, so that you can keep getting the words of me and my incredible co-hosts delivered to your ear roughly every other Wednesday. We will see you next time. Trumpeters? Trumpeters? Trumpeters. Sure, book it. Trumpeters.